the breakout sessions that are going to be happening later in the town hall. Um, a few other things. So we'll be sharing some community guidelines, in terms of how we're all sharing the space together, both in this main space and the breakout sessions that are happening later on, as well as some of the more details about how folks can stay connected and engaged in the conversations going forward. And I want to really acknowledge, again, so much gratitude for many of the partners who signed on with us in order to promote and kind of uplift this town hall for social entrepreneurs here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So many of the Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship, Be Local, Bay Area, SOCAP. We have so many partners, I might name all at once, but just we really appreciate everybody who helped join us in this very short time to get the word out there and bring the community together. And so on that note, one last thing I'll talk about is the agenda for today. We're going to be to bring us into the present moment here and really make the most of our time together. In a second, our colleague Drew is going to be holding a grounding exercise for us all to really bring us into that moment and be with each other. And then our other colleague, Antonio, will be going over a little bit of the history of the Social Enterprise Alliance and this very odd moment in time that we already found ourselves in even before the COVID-19 pandemic, share a bit about that and really the impetus for why we want to reimagine the work we're doing now. And then we'll be going into the breakout discussions later on in the session. And so with that, we'll hand it over to you, Drew. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck, and hi, everybody. Welcome to be here. Welcome. My name is Drew Sillicowan, and I'm going to be leading us in a little grounding exercise. Because we're here to talk about change in our communities today and how we can fully show up for them. But before we do that, we need to take a breath and hold space for ourselves and sink into that first, because we can't give from an empty cup. So we're gonna do a brief reflection with a little bit of journaling or writing. So if you have a pen and paper, I recommend you take a second and grab that now, or a journal, have something handy for when we come out of this reflection in a couple minutes. So if you're ready, I'm asking everybody, if you don't mind, to please close your eyes and to start taking some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, if your body allows it. If your body does not allow it, breathe whatever way is most comfortable for you. And as you're breathing, start focusing your energy inward, and without focusing on any particular sensations for too long, notice what you're feeling in your body right now. Do you feel tight, anxious, expansive, empty, like full of compassion? What are some of the feelings you're feeling, and where do you feel them? Maybe your chest, your stomach, and your hands. Just take a mental note, be aware of what's going on in your body, and just acknowledge it, but don't hold on into any particular feelings. And now let's take one breath and let those feelings go. And with your eyes still closed, keep taking deep breaths and start thinking about why you've chosen your career. What's brought you to this point today? Are there any defining moments or stories that brought you to where you are? Maybe it was luck, maybe it was fate. Regardless of what brought you here today, let's lean into our personal stories and sit with them for a second. And think about some of the uplifting moments or things that keep you motivated. And while you're thinking about that, check in with your body again. Again, breathing deeply, however feels comfortable for you. And as you focus on your journey, notice again what sensations are in your body. Maybe they're the same as before, maybe they're different. Yeah, again, is it tightness, expansiveness, openness, anxiety? Does energy feel lighter, heavier, non-existent? It's not about dwelling on these emotions, but just acknowledging that these feelings are real and they're there, and taking a mental note again before we release these feelings. And we're going to take another deep breath and release. And one more thing with our eyes still closed. keep up with the deep breaths and reflect on your career journey again. But this time, let's focus on the feelings of the current moment. A lot of people have a lot of feelings around the COVID-19 pandemic, and how it's affecting us, our families, our communities, the people we support with our work. Maybe your current feelings aren't really related to the pandemic at all, but regardless, think about the current challenges you're facing right now. And with these challenges in mind, while taking deep breaths, notice again any sensations in your body, where you're feeling certain sensations, what they feel like, and notice how have these feelings shifted or changed since the last two check-ins. Where do you notice them? Or how are they changing? Let's just sit for a moment and breathe into those feelings and just acknowledge them without holding on to them. And now, before we open our eyes, let's take one deep collective breath together and release any feelings that may have come up. So we're gonna take a deep breath in through your nose if you can. And one big exhale. And if you're ready, please open your eyes. And if you have a journal or pen and paper, please take a minute to write down your thoughts or what feelings came up for you during this grounding. A thing to ask yourself is, why do I do the work I do? And how does my work impact those around me? I want us to hold on to these feelings as we move through today's discussions, because these are the feelings that are most important at the end of the day. Where we're coming from and how we're leading and how we're impacting others. And yeah, let's just keep these thoughts in mind as we move through discussions. We're gonna have some breakout discussions in a bit. And right now, if you feel called to, please share in the chat any thoughts you had through the grounding exercise, some feelings you're having, positive, negative, around this collective moment. Anybody wants to share? And yeah. Thank you everybody for kind of leaning into that and doing that exercise with me. So much to do and so little time. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of feelings right now. So if anybody else wants to share, please feel free to do it in the chat. Heaviness, gratitude, anxiety, feeling good. Yes, thank you, Bobby. Feeling there's a lot of changes going on right now. So anyway, thanks everybody for doing this exercise with me. Let's keep sitting in these feelings. And before I pass this off to Antonio, we should go over some ground rules for this call and how we want to operate. Chuck, if you don't mind. Yes. So here's some community guidelines we'd like everybody keep in mind as we move through this call. We just opened with grounding and gratitude. Let's hold on to these feelings again. Respect each other. Don't speak over people. Stay muted as much as possible unless when you're speaking. And there's a lot going on. We want everybody to stay present during this call. So let's try and minimize distractions as much as possible. There might be kids coming in the room or roommates or things like that. We know we're all isolating from home. But let's try and not check too much email and just be really focused on the conversations at hand. And keeping our comments brief and relevant to the discussion. There will be so much opportunity to continue these conversations offline. So not everything has to be said right now, but we really want to just get everybody's thoughts. So I'm going to pass this off to Antonio, and he is going to give us some history and background on what brings us here today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Drew and Chuck, for that amazing introduction and for all your leadership in making this event possible. And thank you, everyone who's joining today. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation, to have the opportunity to facilitate some of the topics that we'll be discussing today. I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself and why we're here. My name is Antonio Aguilera. I work for an organization called coworker.org, and my role is to support the organizing of workers in the tech industry to improve their workplaces. With that work in mind, I also have been president for the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of Social Enterprise Alliance for a while. We are a nonprofit alliance of leaders of business and technology for social justice. Back in 2005, I had the opportunity to start a company in the tech industry providing VoIP services to help people living with HIV to access healthcare through employment. And then in 2007, I had the opportunity to work for a nonprofit organization that had 3 businesses that support people with mental health disabilities get jobs. It was through these experiences that I landed as a member of Social Enterprise Alliance. I had the opportunity to be a part of the nascent movements in Canada when they started their first conferences in social enterprise. In Australia, I participated in the World Forum. And in 2010, we brought the World Forum of Social Enterprises here to San Francisco. For that, we founded the second chapter of the History of Social Enterprise Alliance, which then now we have over 16 chapters in the nation and over 1,000 members in the United States. And that brings us to the conversation today. Recently we started a conversation with the National Board of Social Enterprise Alliance to discuss the future of the chapters. And we're still in that conversation, figuring out if the future of Social Enterprise Alliance will continue to have chapters, if the chapters will spin off as their own organizations. And, all of that started to happen right when the conversation about COVID-19 just started to happen in the United States. And, just yesterday alone, you probably followed the news, we had 700 people who died from COVID-19 related complications. So putting those 2 pieces together, we realized that it was a very opportune moment to bring our community together. We know that we are resilient as social entrepreneurs and that we are stronger together. And, facing the challenges of the moment is an opportunity that we saw in the context of, what's happening with COVID-19 and the changes that are happening at a national level. So we're bringing this conversation back to you, our community, our stakeholders, because we think that this is, a time for you to tell us how do we collaborate, right? Our intention is to create space and infrastructure so we can come together and collaborate and figure out what that means to you as a member of the community of social entrepreneurs and in the Bay Area. So we created this space, this town hall, as a way to facilitate some of those conversations. You'll see today that we have created a thoughtful approach to try to bring the voices of all of you together, of all of us together, and figure out a couple of things. If Chuck, if you can help me change this slide. We're about to go into these breakout sessions. Thank you, Chuck. We've made a call to action for specifically folks in the San Francisco Bay Area to come together and try to address the needs and opportunities of the moment. We want to just remind folks, especially folks who are not based in the San Francisco Bay Area, that the focus of the conversation today is a local conversation about how we in the Bay Area can come together to collaborate. And we want to suggest that there are 2 frames that we want to bring together for these conversations. One is concretely, what is the collaborative work that we can do right now as a community, as an organized community of social entrepreneurs in the Bay Area? What are the objectives, the opportunities that you, your organization, or that you see in the field to collaborate? And some of those opportunities may be around COVID-19, which is one of the most pressing social challenges and future economic challenges in our communities. And then within that frame, we also want to talk about what is the collaboration infrastructure that would be helpful for us to advance that work, right? So on one hand, we want to have a conversation simultaneously around what is the concrete work that we want to do together, and also what are the infrastructural items, whether they are tools, groups, convenings, platforms, that would be helpful to hold that work and move it forward. So before I go in deeper into talking about our breakout sessions, I wonder if other folks who help organize this event have anything to add that I may have missed before we go into specifically what are about to jump in collaboratively. Okay, if there's no other input, we can move forward with the breakout guidelines. Chuck, if you can help change the slide. And we're about to place that link on the chat because we want to drive your attention to, I can type it in the chat if that's better, Chuck, so you can go back to the other slide. You know, we thought what would be the best way to bring us together and bring our conversations to just one place. So we are suggesting to use this document that you have in your chat window right now, that you also have in the presentation. For folks who are on the phone, I'm not sure exactly how that will translate. Maybe we can ask Drew to help us, or Davey, with engaging folks who are not accessing this presentation on their computers. But for folks who are on your computers, we would like to ask you to, yeah, I got a message about my voice being not too loud, so I'll come closer to the mic. We want to ask you to go to this Google Doc, because in this Google Doc, you'll see some guidelines for how to engage in the conversations today. Basically, there's going to be two sessions. One is to identify struggles and needs and opportunities. And the other one is to talk about ideas for actionable work to be better connected and better organized and have a better infrastructure as a grassroots groups of leaders in our community. Throughout these sessions, in a moment, you will be automatically assigned to a breakout room in a group of 4 people. We want you to please pay attention to your group number at the top of your Zoom window, so it matches the group notes. The group notes are going to be captured in this Google Doc as well. We will have an opportunity to spend 15 minutes with our breakout group and having a conversation around the topic at hand for each sessions. We'll break into the first session as a first step, and facilitators are going to be hovering around. We're going to ask our facilitators to join some of the groups in case people have questions. And we're going to ask you in your group to discuss the topic for each session within the frames that we're suggesting, and to designate one person to take notes. The notes will be captured in this document, the document that we shared. We ask you that you identify the page for your group, the one that corresponds to the number in Zoom. And with that number of your work group, your note taker should be able to interact with the document and keep the notes tightly into one page for your group and for your session. Your group will have 15 minutes to engage in that conversation. If you do not find a section for your group, please just enter a page break into the document and start a new page following the sequence of the numbers in the document. We're trying to remain organized. And after the 15 minutes are almost over, Zoom will give you a 1-minute warning before the time is up. You will be brought back into the plenary session with the rest of the group, and we'll open the space for a few groups to share highlights of your group discussions. And please do share. Then after we review those highlights, we will break into the second session for about 15 minutes. You will be randomly assigned with a different group of 4 by Zoom, and we will ask you to do the exact same thing. We'll review these notes after we share highlights of the first session. And at the end, we're gonna have an opportunity to review all the information that every group shared and to have some sort of agreement collectively about what are the priorities that we want to move forward in our work. And we'll touch on next steps on how to move that work forward, how to remain connected. I also want to share that all throughout this session, if you ever feel the need to stand up and take a break, to take a bio break or for whatever other reason, please take care of yourself. Take that time. Just maybe mute yourself, mute your camera, and go take care of whatever you need to take care of. Come back and continue with the engagement. So please feel the freedom to do that. And this document is going to remain open for you to review these guidelines. And for each of the sessions, there is a page. At the left of the document, you have the outline of the document, so it's easier to scroll up and down through the information. So if at any point you have questions about session 1, please click on the breakout session 1 link on the outline of the document. If you have questions about guidance, please click on that link so you can be brought back into the document. And then the breakout groups are labeled in the side of the document so you can access your breakout quickly. So if you do have questions about this process, please paste them on the chat window. The facilitators, including myself, will be able to address some of those questions as we go into the breakout sessions. And I just wanted to introduce the first session so we are clear about what is the conversation that we're about to have. In the first session, we want to hear your voice in identifying what are the struggles, the needs, the opportunities that you see in this moment of social enterprise and business for good. We want you to focus your thoughts in things that can be addressed by collaboration. So we want you to think about these two connected frames that I discussed a moment ago. Concretely for this session, please think about the struggles, the pain points, the challenges that you're experiencing in your social entrepreneurship or that you see in the field. It could be potentially around COVID-19. And think about which ones of those challenges, pain points, and opportunities could benefit from collaborating with a grassroots alliance of social entrepreneurs like we are here together today. And you can also think about the gaps in your collaboration infrastructure, in the collaboration infrastructure that we have, that are potential barriers to effectively engage with other social entrepreneurs for addressing these goals and opportunities. So I see some folks having some challenges with accessing the doc. Please click on the link, and if you are unable to join, we'll support you. The facilitators will engage in a chat conversation with you to problem solve. But it sounds like at this point, we have enough information to jump into breakout sessions. If we can get Chuck to help us navigate through the breakouts, we're about to be separated into breakout sessions in groups of 4, and please refer back to the document for guidance. Another thing that is important to mention is that in your Zoom session, you have a button that says ask for help. So if at any point you need help from us, please click on that button. It'll signal Chuck as the host, and Chuck will dispatch someone to help you address whatever challenge you're having with the technology. We very much appreciate your thoughts and participation, and we encourage you to open your mics and open your cameras as soon as you join into the breakout session so you can engage in conversation with everybody else. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Antonio. And so I'm going to open up the rooms now, and everybody have some fun with it too, right? Let's let those juices flow for everybody who chooses to, right? And
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming back to this main session and for spending time talking to one another. I'm sorry, one of the groups I got pulled out in the middle of showing up. I apologize for that. We're kind of like hoping that the technology works, but it's a big experiment. So yeah, I'll let Drew follow up with our next item. I think it's on the presentation, Chuck. I think we're in highlights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, Chuck, did you have anything you want to say?
No.
Okay. We just wanted to, now that we are back together again as a large group, here with just maybe like 2 or 3 people, if you're open to sharing what your takeaways, like the key things you heard in the group that that you'd like to share with the larger community. If anybody wants to either like raise a hand in the chat or just unmute themselves and share a couple words, keeping it brief. We'd love to hear what your takeaways were just now.
This is Jim. My big takeaway was, I mean, I didn't really think I was going to stay on this call because I felt like it's in the Bay Area for one thing, and it's and I have some tools that. But anyway, the big takeaway was that people are working on stuff and they're blocked because of the system. I mean, the system is now, COVID-19 provides an opportunity for us to change the system. And everybody out there that I was listening to is blocked by the current system. So if I could contribute some ideas about how we could transform the system, it would be helping all these different social engineers and social entrepreneurs, et cetera. Because the getting back to normal is not enough. It's not going to do it. The system itself is terminal. And what's really opportune here is an opportunity to transform the system, because it has to be done. And we have to do that. And here's a way. I mean, I have a strategy, but maybe if that collaboration could be the social entrepreneurs, each with their own energy and wanting to fix and help the people that are suffering and so forth, maybe here's a way.
Thank you for that, Jim.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, does somebody else want to chime in?
Sure.
Okay, sure. I think that's all wonderful. And I was in a group with Day, and we both brought up a lot of good ideas as well. And one thing that's occurred to me is that so much of this mental health advice in terms of dealing with this is to keep your routines the same as much as possible, so you can kind of ignore the fact that the world is changing. And so I just say, if we're keeping everything the same, to stay sane, not that I want to like go insane, but that what about making space for change and letting our routines be shaken up a bit so that we can, you know, maybe break out of things that aren't serving us anymore and going into doing things differently in ways that are healthier and more sustainable, you know, for us and the planet. So that's something that we thought of. And so our group talked about how coronavirus is highlighting a lot of the same challenges that nonprofits and social enterprises have sort of perennially dealt with: communication, fundraising, access to capital, just kind of being able to reach people and clarifying what we're doing. And so we're also seeing a lot of people rushing to get into online communication, which on the one hand is great with the uptake of technology, but then can also be hard as there's a digital divide. Not everybody has access to or is comfortable using all of these tools. So I really think that communications people and PR people such as myself can serve others, particularly those who are trying to get people to publicize disaster-related fundraisers or make masks. You know, we could really help people who are trying to assist people during the crisis or with longer-term efforts by sharing our expertise about communications and PR and outreach, you know, using this technology or just in general, just to really enhance the community. So also a good time to really address the digital divide once and for all. And this breaks down a lot of social boundaries too. I've been able to reach out to more higher end people than before who I never thought would reply to my emails just because their routines are shaken up by coronavirus. And I think it's a time for people to reach out to people around the country and around the world, just to break down a lot of those barriers, and also to reconceptualize how we exchange money and to think about barter and mutual aid. We were kind of talking about how we're at a emperor has no clothes moment with the global financial system, you know, with all of that, you know, borrowing money in banks and stocks and stuff. So to start thinking about barter for services and mutual aid and real human and ecological connections.
Thank you for that, Christina. Thank you. Like, yeah, clearly, I wish I could take more feedback, right? Or not feedback, but more thoughts right now. But we have to move into the next session. But I just want to highlight again, like right now, the system is not sustainable. The way it's been going, we need to really shake it up and disrupt. And I'm sorry, somebody.
Yeah, could I add something?
Yeah.
So what we talked about fundraising, and then maybe with the network that we have within the group, and using social media, maybe we could do like fundraising for like certain organization, you know, inviting people to join via Zoom, and then the organization would do the presentation about the organization, and then get some donation going. Like schedule it once once every day, or a couple days a week, to have featuring different nonprofits to get funding.
Mm.
So we trying to do is we trying to address the digital divide, and without funding, we can't refurbish the computers and buy chargers to distribute to the kids in school right now. They needed computers within 2 to 3 weeks, and we can't get any funding for that to give them. So
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I saw in the notes a lot of people said funding is a major barrier and a challenge right now. So this is definitely a common theme that we've been seeing. But I want to keep the conversation moving forward, because the next stage we'll be talking about what we can do moving forward. And I saw before we do that, a few people posted some resources in the chat. Thank you. First of all, we want to see those resources, and I want to say too, we have we've been talking about the Slack channel, and we'll talk more at the end, but we're gonna have a Slack channel that we hope that you all share these resources again there, so that we can all have access to these lists and resources. But we're about to move out into the breakout session number 2. It's going to be with a different group of people than you were just with. So you might need to reintroduce yourself, and hopefully it goes a little bit smoother, as far as, like, I know some people kind of got moved around in groups. So hopefully this time it won't be so bad. So in this breakout session, we want to look for concrete ideas that are actionable for our work, to be better so that we can stay better connected, better organized, and build more solid infrastructure for our community of social entrepreneurs and people in this business for good space. So everyone in your group, some things to think about are your top priority objective, or an opportunity that you or your organization might have. It could be around the COVID-19 outbreak, or it could not be, in the next few months. And these opportunities that could benefit from collaboration with our grassroots network. And also in that, if you have any ideas or opportunities for infrastructure, that could be tools, groups, events, platforms that may be helpful for our collaboration. In this session, we want you to share all that. And again, in the Google Doc that we had, but there's a second set of group breakout sessions you'll see on the side. So go to the breakout session 2 and take notes again, as you did before, under your breakout group number, which is at the top of the screen. And so I think with that, we can start putting people in the groups.
If I can add something quickly, just to
Yes.
note that, well, thank you, Drew, for guiding us. And I had an opportunity to dive into different conversations. I saw a lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much for joining us today. The next breakout groups may not be the same, actually will not be the same of the groups that you had earlier. So we encourage you to review the notes in the document. We just did a bit of a share out of the highlights that some folks share, that Drew shared with us. But you have access to the document, so feel free to dive back into the conversations that you had with your previous group and re-engage with the new group. And I won't take more time so we can all discuss. Thank you.
Okay, everybody's coming back in the main room. Okay, awesome. So we have almost everyone back. We only have about 15 minutes left of this call, so I want to make sure we can get some highlights and cover the last minute things before that time is out. So if people want to share in the chat some of the, type in some things that they heard as some opportunities that they want to share, or we can keep them in the notes, but I'm gonna ask for 2 people to share what they heard in their group, and try and keep it to 60 seconds if you can. Yeah, I'm asking for 2 shares right now if anybody wants to share what they just took away from their session. feel free to unmute
I'd
and
love
just,
to comment if I may.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, so keeping this to my 60 seconds, just wanted to continue some thoughts that we left off on in my last group in that second session regarding measuring success. And how do you measure success? The two issues with that, we tend to, in America, in American business, we tend to measure success by short-term process. But when you're talking about social change, the benefit might not be evident till 5 or 10 years later. And so how do you convince funders or supporters to be thinking long-term? The second issue is that sometimes supporters are looking for a number of participants that you've helped. But in my mentoring program, we're not trying to, we're focused on keeping our mentoring sessions as small as possible so that we can have the highest quality highest quality communication relationship between the mentor and the apprentice. And that contradicts the typical expectation of having as many participants as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to share really quickly on what they just took away from their group call or group discussion? Feel free to jump in.
All right, I will. Thanks. So yeah, we were started off with kind of just observing that we may need to hunker down for longer. If there's a potential for a longer term shift to these away from kind of in-person meetings and doing more remotely for 8 months or more, and talking about taking advantage of social boundaries being in flux to build global bridges. We discussed coming together on some consensus on collaboration platforms, because there's so much, like so many different things that we could do there, and trying to come up with, you know, some way of deciding together like what we were doing. Some fun phrases came out that I felt like were worth sharing. So one of them was engineering for serendipity density. In other words, like how can we create a situation where we're kind of magically, quickly collaborating together in a dynamic way without like a lot of kind of friction or overhead in that process, because I don't think we want to spend a lot of time on the process, because we actually want work to happen. So I think that those were the most valuable takeaways for us.
Awesome, thank you for sharing, Day. We just heard these two takeaways, and aside from those, our team has been searching through the notes and pulling out some of the takeaways and the themes we've been seeing throughout this town hall. So we're gonna have a little poll. We've kind of gathered, we can't of course capture everything in this poll, but we gathered a list of about 10 things that we think are opportunities that we can start building and collaborating around. So Chuck should just be launching the poll now of 10 things. We're asking everybody to pick, if of these 10, what would your top 3 choices be? So the options here are aggregating best practices for collaborating around COVID-19, a mutual aid fund for social entrepreneurs, mental health support, neighborhood-based resources, ways to transmit our local knowledge in the Bay Area on a national level, guides for new social entrepreneurs and moving into the space, metrics and ways to build consensus on how we measure impact. That's that we have that there. Extending our ability to collaborate globally, and aggregating sources so that they're easy to sift through. I heard a lot of people saying there's the amount of resources just overwhelming. And lastly, like accountability partnerships. So how do we stay accountable in these times and get things going? So you have about a minute to pick 3. I see Lauren from Red F just shared some more resources that we can add those to our Slack channel after this as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for contributing today. And we're doing this poll to see how Social Enterprise Alliance, how our organization can fill in some of these gaps, but we can't fill in all of these gaps. So if we really, there's so much collective wisdom in this group, and there are ways that we hope that you can take these conversations forward on your own and stay in contact with maybe some people you talked with, or through our Slack channel, keep facilitating these conversations and these collaborations while we all work together collectively towards our goals. So it looks like about half of people have voted that are on. I don't know if some people are just on the phone and can't, or I apologize if you just aren't able to vote right now. But so far, it looks like most people are, what we have the most votes for so far is aggregating resources so they're easy to sift through, and extending our ability to collaborate globally, and how to make these social barriers more permeable are the two top answers so far. And the third, next one.
Is there a spot to add? I think there's better answers than those.
Unfortunately, no. We are very limited to, we're kind of constricted by the platform here, so we have to keep it at 10, but I wish we could.
Feel free to, sorry to interrupt, just feel free to add it in the chat. What we're going to do with the chat conversation is that we're going to take it back to try to kind of massage the data that comes from the Google Doc, the chat, this poll. And our hope is that we can re-engage with you. We've been talking about this Slack community because we think that that's probably the most accessible place for us to come back together and continue our conversations. And I'll let Drew share kind of the results, and then I'll go a little deeper into that conversation about next steps.
Yeah, looking at the results, the top three are kind of the ones we had just talked about, expanding our ability to collaborate globally, moving across more social barriers, finding ways to do that. The second being aggregating resources so they're easy to sift through, and aggregating best practices for on and offline collaboration during this crisis. But there's, of course, people voted for everything. People voted for everything, so there's need everywhere. See people, oh, cheaper option for Zoom. Anyway, okay, so we have a lot of resources here and a lot of ideas and opportunities. I'm gonna hand it back to Antonio to close us out. But thank you, everyone. I just want to thank everybody for sharing and being here.
Thank you so much, Drew. Yeah, so as I was saying, our intention is to create space to hold these conversations, to collaborate as a community of social entrepreneurs in the Bay Area. And today was really just the beginning of that conversation, right? Like we're pressed with time. We're trying to create space for everyone to have a voice, to be able to put their thoughts forward. And our hope is that after this presentation, we have an opportunity to review everything that was collected. There's a lot of data points. We got the poll, we got the chat, we got the Google Doc. So our team is gonna come back together and start putting this information and make sense of it. We're hopeful that you can join us in our Slack community because we want to continue to engage in these conversations with you. And Chuck, if you can help me kind of like putting that next step slide on the screen so we can all see it. But I think that the first next step is to continue the conversations on Slack. We really want to emphasize that because we're hopeful that when we go to Slack as a community, the result of the poll, the information that we collected in the Google Doc will become Slack channels. So people who are interested in those conversations can start and continue the collaborations that were born today. We also want to invite you to co-lead with us. We, as you saw, Drew, Chuck, myself, Doreen, Davey, other folks who have been involved with the organizing of this event. We're part of this community as well. We are social entrepreneurs like you are. We are stepping up to positions of leadership, and we want you to step up into those positions with us. If you're interested in facilitating one of these conversations through an action group, through a Slack channel, to organize an event and engage the rest of the community, that's what we are hoping that we can get out of these conversations, to start engaging folks at whatever level that you have capacity to engage, to build collaborations in the sector. And also not only within the Bay Area, but we're hopeful that in the conversation that we have with other chapters across the United States with Social Enterprise Alliance, that we can engage our local communities in a broader conversation at the national level to continue exploring how we may concretely collaborate in a way that is meaningful to our communities, that is meaningful to us as entrepreneurs, that allows us to create space to take care of each other and to support each other's initiatives and leadership. So those are our next steps that we want to suggest for you. I think it's all taken care of if you join the Slack. There is a form that you have to fill out. It's really for us to get to know who you are, your interests, and what do you work on. So we can then start making those connections, right? It's messy when we all are disorganized. So we're hopeful that we can get a little better organized. That's why we wanted to have the conversation today. And we very much appreciate you being here. We appreciate the work that you do and being part of this community. And I want to just save a couple of minutes for other folks who may have closing statements before we jump off.
I just want to say that it's great to get together with social entrepreneurs from around the Bay Area. This is Bobby, and I just want to say, even though we're in a virtual world now, it's still great to be a part of a local community of solidarity across the change-making sector. So excellent to spend a little time with y'all.
I just want to clarify, there's people in the chat. There's 2 links in the chat. One is for a form, which is we would prefer you to fill out this form, which is a Google form, and then from there we'll invite you to the Slack channel. But that is where you can indicate if you'd like to step into some form of leadership moving forward. That form is where where you can express that interest. And then there was another link to the Slack channel directly. Both are in the chat right now. But we've got about 2 minutes. And I wanted to do one final thing, if y'all are okay with it, and that's just like a collective like release breath. And something kind of silly is, let's like take in a deep breath and then make just a noise, like how are we feeling moving forward, expressing any excitement, enthusiasm, frustration, whatever we're feeling in the moment. Let's just like let it out before we close out this call. So let's take in a deep breath together, and
everybody on mute.
We should
Make sure to unmute yourselves.
Oh yeah,
Everybody
good
on
call,
mute.
good call. Okay, so
All right,
Count us
I'm
down.
ready.
Drew.
okay, so on 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thanks for being silly, y'all. If you have any lingering questions, please post them in the chat, post them in the Slack channel. We are happy to reach out individually to address them. And thanks again for everybody being here. This was incredible. And I hope you all have a great week and are staying healthy and happy and feeling supported.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today.
Thanks, y'all.